Good morning. You're listening to FloorDaily.net, and I'm Kemp Harr. I'm in Charlotte at the annual NWFA, National Wood Flooring Association trade show, and I'm with Michael Martin, the president and CEO. Michael, you doing okay this morning?
I'm doing great, Kemp. Thanks for taking some time to talk with us.
We just finished our May issue, our annual report issue, and let's start with that. We look at all the categories. We just looked at hardwood. Looking back at 15 versus 14, we think it's up about 7% to just under $3 billion at wholesale value. Does that sound reasonable to you?
Yes, it does. And I think, for the last few years we've seen double-digit growth, and I think by the time the year ends, we'll be close to that again this year. And we just continue to see demand for the category.
Yeah. One of the things I think that's helping the category, since wood floors are really not floor covering, but permanent floors, when builders are building homes, you see a lot more activity. So the fact that the builder market's doing well this year is going to bode well for your business, right?
Oh, absolutely. And I think the builder market is back to a point where we're not just talking about multifamily and more track home activity. We're starting to see more high-end activity again, and we're starting to see real investments in new construction homes. And by and large, when we see the research, the consumers really prefer, for building a new house, that they do mostly hard surfaces. There's not a lot of carpet going in.
All right. So the NWFA Trade Association, how many years you've been at the leadership?
This is my fifth show, so my fifth year with the association.
Well, I'm impressed with what you're able to do. Like most trade associations, you are the advocacy group. You work hard to make sure that whatever's in the way of the success of the business is minimized. And some of your key initiatives, I know you've been focused on building your membership. Talk about how that's going.
Yes. Well, I think when you look at, NWFA is a little bit different than some of the other trade organizations in the fact that we represent the whole supply chain. So we have manufacturers of wood flooring, we have distributors of wood flooring, we have retailers, contractors, dealers, installers, inspectors. Everybody has a seat at the board table. So that's a little different. Usually a trade association represents one of those constituents. But the greatness of having everybody at the table is that we can move decisions pretty quickly through the channel, and that we're trusted to really be out for the best interest of the entire channel and not one specific delegate. As far as the growth, we feel like on the manufacturing and distribution side, we have the majority of the players. So I'd say we're about 80%, 85% of the markets represented through NWFA domestically in Canada. On the contracting side and the retail side, we have tremendous opportunity for growth. And with online initiatives, I think we have a way to get to those folks who can't necessarily come to us. So whether they don't come to Expo or they don't come to our training, we have some new initiatives that will allow us to have a value for those folks that really need the education we haven't been able to get downstream yet.
All right, so one of your core focuses as you look at the balance of membership is to bring more contractors in, right?
Absolutely. Contractors and small retailers in particular. Again, the folks that may not necessarily have the funding or the ability to get away from the job site, that's where we kind of have in the past not been able to get the education downstream again.
Mm-hmm. Now, I sat in on the beginning session yesterday, and you talked about some things you're doing this year. It's very interesting. You're kicking off the NWFA University, and you're also publishing a consumer publication. So talk briefly about both those, if you would.
Sure, absolutely. Well, first, let's talk about the NWFA Online University. Really, all of our education gets rolled up and split out differently with this initiative. One of the things we're able to do with the online portion when it launches in July is to put our existing hands-on training in a different format so that some of that content will go online. So you come to class prepared for more time with the hands-on portion. But we can guarantee that you've gotten the education that you need before you get there. And, of course, we'll recap it, but we're really going to rely on actually adding in more education. So that allows us then to track the student through the process. Once they get through the hands-on portion, we'll require them to go back to the online university, take a look at what they've learned, and make for sure that we've delivered the deliverables out of each one of those courses that we want to, and we can measure that success, and we can measure whether the student got those particular things. And then all of that builds towards certification. It also builds toward badging, which is a way that you can, within the NWFA membership or certification program, you can rise above in the ranks locally with consumer search on our consumer website, woodflorist.org. We have tremendous traffic on woodflorist.org, but we've yet, until this year, been able to capitalize on that in some way that really pushes our members out progressively. So with the online university, once you've earned a badge, say, board replacement or whatever, and if that's important to a consumer and they see that label attached to you, then that helps promote you and you'll show up higher in the rankings. The more you invest in your own education, the more we trust recommending you in the local market. So we'll start to see those rankings go up as far as how much training you've completed. You will show up higher than your competitors by zip code.
Now, these are behind a firewall, so you have to get some kind of code to go in and look at this, right?
On the consumer site, no. All you have to do is go to woodfloors.org and search by zip code, and the contractors and the retailers will show up in that category by zip code.
But the online university, that's behind a firewall, right?
Yes, correct. As far as the online university goes, that's a member benefit. You have to be a member of NWFA. We looked at several different pricing structures where we do non-member or member pricing, but we really feel like the value being part of NWFA, the membership is really not very expensive at $425. So we feel like putting the online university as a member benefit only helps us kind of simplify things, and it really is a member benefit. So once you go to nwfa.org on the member site and log in with your membership, then you have access to the online university.
Now, this consumer publication, real briefly on that, that's really something for the RSA or the person at the retail store to kind of help them sell with, right?
Yes, correct. I mean, the purpose is kind of twofold. Number one, it's a lookbook, so it really gives some really great visuals of maybe some hardwoods that the consumer isn't aware of or doesn't know, but they have some really nice pictures to be able to walk in and say, I really like this. Let's look at something like this. That's helpful. Number two, it takes you through the whole process of selection as far as what do you need to know as a consumer to make the right decision. Because what we've seen at the point of sale in retail is that as more and more carpet stores, for example, started picking up factory-finished wood, as distribution went more fragmented and more distribution that didn't necessarily carry wood started carrying more and more, there's been a little bit of a disconnect in the product knowledge that's necessary. And so what we see a lot is a retail associate who perhaps is uncomfortable selling wood, or they don't have enough knowledge, they don't feel like they're comfortable with it, so they may go to something they're more comfortable with from the sales perspective. And also, from the consumer standpoint, there's a checklist that you can check off to make for sure that you made the right selection for your environment. So, if it's a basement, you want to make sure we can help guide that process if they don't end up putting a solid product in a basement.
Last quick question is some of the challenges that any of your members are facing. I know there's a challenge for these look-alike products. I mean, obviously, LVT is growing very fast. It looks like wood. It's not wood. So talk about that if you would, or maybe any other challenges that your members are facing.
Well, I guess I'd be more concerned about that if we saw the demand lowering for wood and both categories are rising at the same time. So I don't see an issue there as far as I think the natural preference, again, from the research we've seen, the natural preference, the consumer preference is wood. Mm-hmm. And I think that we've had enough news out lately that, you're seeing the consumer be a little more aware of the differences between the flooring types. There are applications that a tile that looks like wood isn't necessarily a bad choice, especially in commercial space. And so we kind of consider that free advertising, if you will. And it just, again, drives the preference that people love the look of wood. They love the natural look of what it provides in an environment. And if the category were shrinking, I'd tell you we had an issue. But, as far as challenges that I see in the channel, margins continue to be an issue. I was kind of hopeful as the raw material prices rose a couple of years ago that we would see people maintain those pricing levels so that the profitability stayed within the category. But somebody's always willing to sell below, and that always affects the profit margins for the whole industry.
Interesting you say that. I know that two of the major suppliers are raising prices this week, so perhaps that'll help.
Well, I hope so. I mean, we all have to operate healthy businesses, and we've got to sell the product that's in demand. And so there has to be a happy medium where everybody's able to keep their business going, but at the same time not overcharging the consumer for a product they really want.
All right, Michael, I know you're busy, and you've got a full agenda here with a lot of good education and then a trade show. Again, been talking to Michael Martin, the president and CEO of the NWFA in Charlotte, and you've been listening to Kemp Harr and FloorDaily.net.